Probably. What can you please tell me that you already know the proper name for that?
No, I'm not testing you. I don't know.
Oh,
You're British. You guys invented that particular type of diagram, so I thought you might know.
yeah, yeah. No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay, we'll
Sorry
have to
about
stay
that. I'll
academic.
ask. I'll ask the god of Britishness later
Yes,
and see if he
please.
knows it.
All things British, every
Oh,
bit. So, okay.
everything British. Yes, I know. Anyway, go
Uh,
on.
okay, so now is the time to put up the scary PDF. Here we go, kids. Boop.
Woo.
And this will be something that we also share out. There's a link to this. I'm not giving it out now because I don't want you reading ahead or getting distracted. Okay,
Mhm.
but you're welcome to this. This is my gift to the world. Is this PDF, and inside of it is the basis for an argument, a hypothesis, I would say a theory, if we're talking about the proper gradations of a scientific theorem to a proof. I'd say it's a theory, definitely, that HIV came from an era of science that began in the 1950s that they had a name for. It was called medical primatology, like primates.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it meant that so much was happening in pharma production and in experimental human investigations, like solving problems for diseases and creating new medications. And then, unfortunately, as most of us know that look back at this era of history, the war never ended. You say Cold War because there weren't fires from bombs anymore. But boy, it was hot in the labs. Those Bunsen burners were still running. And we went right into a very aggressive era of biowarfare. And I'm not going to, this will not be a deep, deep history lesson about all about the 50s and post World War II. There are incredible scholars. There are so many people, documentarians, authors, professors, just all sorts of folks who have done excellent, excellent work of really excavating the raw and we'll say the unspun version of history. The really looking at the real deal. What did we do? Who did it? What are the results on contemporary society, medicine, public health, things like that? All of this is the nature of anthropology. And because we're talking about medicine, that makes it medical anthropology. Let's proceed. So there are a lot of different primate pathogens that are now in public health. And friends, by the way, this will be an abbreviated version of the timeline. I'm gonna really try and put the speed up to a faster rate so that we can just explore. And Johnny and I can come back and click on certain things and dig in. So the use of chimpanzees and rhesus macaques are really the two hottest species that bring us into this conversation. The reason the chimpanzees are important is because they introduced us to one of their endemic pathogens that don't cause disease in the animal, SIV. That's its contemporary name. Simian immunodeficiency virus, CPZ, the type from the chimp. There are multiple types of SIVs. Also, the chimpanzee brought us RSV. You might be seeing ads right now trying to scare seniors into taking an RSV vaccine, a brand new type of product on the market. Well, it's quite an interesting story that RSV used to be called chimpanzee coryza agent for about 10 minutes. And then they said, oh, we can't have a pathogen that's now unfortunately contaminating all kinds of biological production systems being named after a chimpanzee. So they renamed it. It's called redesignation. And they designated it RSV, respiratory syncytial virus, but it came from the chimp. And we'll talk a little bit more about what the rhesus macaque brought us in just a minute. In the midst of this era was an unfortunate sort of shitstorm of public health problems like the polio issue, and then problems with biological agents that caused a massive gap in public confidence in biologicals. When I say biologicals, I mean vaccines, kids. There's a parent term now about what an injectable concoction is. So I say biologicals. In the midst of all of this, there was an outbreak of hepatitis, and really an ongoing problem with hepatitis B at a huge school. It was the United States' largest public health facility, I believe, on Staten Island. It's called Willowbrook. There are documentaries and books about what happened with these doctors and the children and the Willowbrook School experience. We'll see these scientists again as we go a little further along. One of the important things to note about them is that they were working on hepatitis B vaccines. And in this whole era, everybody was growing a lot of their products and experimental vaccines on chimpanzee and other primate substrates. Substrate means cells that have been pureed, just chopped up, turned into basically a paste. And then you work them through a process of filtration and deactivation. You can clear out certain contaminants, but they continued to use primates in much of the experimental science that then got fed to the children or injected into the children. They did some very, very untoward things. It's an interesting story. Willowbrook is its own little side passage on this rabbit hole. But let's keep going. The chimpanzee coryza agent we just discussed is still in circulation today. It contaminated influenza vaccines for years until finally they said, oh, yeah, we keep seeing that every time we start the flu vaccine season, the kickoff, it's time to get your flu shot. We then see a very consistent correlative wave of pneumonia deaths that seem to test positive for RSV. And they figured out that they were giving pneumonia to people. They were spreading it. People that were getting a shot were shedding live virus. So pneumonia is endemic. And now they're giving us a new product. They want you to take a vaccine to try and protect you from a pathogen that was introduced to public health from a vaccine. I'm Greek. I call that an ouroboros. This is a very, very important point in the timeline. And it's really, there are two major bodies of work on this slide that I'd like to pay homage to. One of them we'll start with is a British investigator named Ed Hooper, who is a fantastic investigator. He's a self-taught scientist, in my opinion, just from the volume, the number of years, and the amount of study. It's just like, he deserves an honorary PhD. But his work and the work of a documentary team that followed the publication of his book in the late 90s really drew attention to a particular event in the Belgian Congo. I don't want to take things away from either of these fantastic pieces of history. They tell the story of millions of people, over a million Africans in this particular campaign being exposed to raw SIV because they proved in the course of their work, between Mr. Hooper's book, the confrontation they had with scientists at the Royal Society in 2001, and then the publication of this movie. They show, and by the way, the link on this brings you to a free, an archive.org version, a public educational version of the film. But it really shows the conduct of science when confronted with the possibility that they might have had something to do with the HIV story.